Hello and welcome back to the Transfer Flow podcast. And on today's episode, it's nearly 6 months of Vincent Kompany at Bayern Munich, but what have we learned from the Belgians' time in charge? Then we look at Lyon, who need to sell 100 million euros worth of players in January. Who would we pick out from the fire sale? Before we go over to Italy, has the 7-team Serie A title race narrowed down to just 3? That's all on today's episode. So we're back for another European roundup. It's really good to see you, Ravi. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Patrick. I'm doing very good. How are you? Getting ready for holidays?
Well, kind of getting ready for holidays, but it kind of feels like on this side of things, everything's just ramping up. I mean, I know you're busy across multiple sports, but it's nice to get a little look in at where things are because some results have kind of got funky recently. I think the congestion of the Champions League and domestic cup competitions getting going. We've seen some of the bigger teams stumble. So we thought it was a good time to take a little tour around the continent and see what's going on. And the first place that we thought we'd stop in at is Bayern Munich. Now, obviously in the summer, they wanted Xabi Alonso. They didn't get him. I think they maybe had a little think about Jurgen Klopp as manager. Mm-hmm. They certainly did not get him. Felt like everybody else they'd already hired and fired. So they took the very unusual move of hiring a manager from a relegated club from the Premier League. Now Vincent Kompany is not just any relegated manager. Obviously, he does have a kind of stature in the game as a player. And I think that was a factor, right, in their in their recruitment, because over the last few years, this dressing room has been a little bit of a problem for a few coaches, right?
Yeah. And, I think going back to Kompany's hire, I think they looked at his more of a continental profile, even though he played in England. I think he spoke multiple languages and something that they wanted in the Bayern locker room, somebody that could speak German and communicate with a lot of the players. Other players. So somebody that's very comfortable doing that. It felt like I don't know. It sounded like a very Euro signing to bring him in. Obviously, he has the coaching credentials at Burnley. He got them up the way they played in Championship and the way they got into the Premier League so there was definitely a risk because he's never managed at a highest level. I mean, okay, he managed one season of Burnley in the Premier League and they got relegated. So, and he never managed a team that had to fight on multiple fronts. So before we go dig further into this, I wanted to ask you a question. What do you think, given this background of Kompany, what do you think are the success criteria in your mind, like for him in season 1 at Bayern?
Well, it kind of feels like it's like one of the criteria is always you have to win the Bundesliga.
Yes.
You have to win the Bundesliga. You have to go probably to quarters, but really semis in the Champions League. I think you could get away with quarters of the Champions League. I don't know, like, do you think it ends with those kind of achievements, or do you think that this time they also kind of thought, we want to see a development of a style of play too?
Yeah, so going back to, that's exactly what I've written in my notes is win the Bundesliga with ease, like the way generally Bayern wins them, and then at least reach quarterfinals in the Champions League, preferably semifinals. But I think, once you reach quarterfinals, sometimes you play Real Madrid, or sometimes you play Porto or Monaco or someone, and then it's a different draw at that point. Depends a little bit on the draw.
Yeah.
So I think those two are probably what his things. One thing that I noticed with him is that he seemed to have lost against all the big matches, like or drawn all the big matches. Like if you look at the league. Some of these where he dominated XG, some of these where he did not, Bayern did not dominate XG. So they drew with Leverkusen early in the season, where they did dominate XG, but was not like they had 5 XG or 3 XG and it was like they had 1 point something and Leverkusen had 0.1 or 0.2, something like that. It was not like they were creating a lot. Frankfurt, another draw. Frankfurt is, I think, is third place in the table right now. Third or fourth. Dortmund, dominated XG here, but they were missing Harry Kane. I'll get to that in a point. And then they lost to Mainz recently, this past weekend. Champions League, lost to Villa away, lost to Barcelona away. I think Barcelona, they got completely outplayed. But I think even though they scored a couple, did they score a couple or they scored one goal?
They scored one. Yeah, they lost 4-1.
Yeah, but I think they, in terms of XG, they were completely outplayed. And I think against Villa, they did win the XG battle, but it's, Emery games where they scored and then you know how that goes. So if you look at it, like these are the games I would look at Bayern manager and say, well, these were the reasonably tough games, except Mainz, I think the last one. If you take that away, all of these are among the toughest fixtures he had to play this season. And like he hasn't done as well as you would want him to, I think, results-wise, or even XG has also been a mixed bag. So for me, like straight away, I see they beat Dinamo Zagreb 9-2 or Red Star Belgrade 9-2, right? Okay. So there's also these results that are just, completely lopsided when they go up against teams that are decidedly very weak compared to them. But anyway, like I think that's one point that I see this and I'm sure that's what, if you are in the Bayern board, they are looking at, well, every time we go up against a relatively bigger team, we haven't gotten the results. Now that could change. He has more opportunities to prove that was just a fluke. That was just kind of a small sample. I think, so that was one thing that I noticed. The other thing is that he's missed some of his top personnel they didn't really miss they missed like 6 games or 7 games, but they've been missing 3 or 4 games. I think out of 14 games in the Bundesliga, Kane has missed about 300 to 400 minutes, or, he missed about 3 starts. Davies has missed. Neuer has missed. Neuer is not the highest minute, accumulator in the team. Like generally you want your goalkeepers. And so they had to do with it. Musiala missed about 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
And so these are all small stretches, but think about this as a new manager coming in to a new league and coming to this a very dominant team. And now he has to also adjust to missing some of their best players and rotating and constantly finding solutions. So to me, like that part is another thing that's like, you could say, well, they don't look as much of an efficient machine as they used to be before. With him, this is another reason that I could pick out. And then the other thing is like about players itself. I think João Paulinho, I don't know about that signing. I thought we didn't like it at the time. And I don't think he's played well. And so what is happening is that Pavlovic, who is like a 20-year-old who just turned 19 to 20, I think, recently, he's been playing a lot more minutes. I think he's a good young talent, but again, like you are having to depend on something that is maybe that's not what was the plan going in. So you are having to adapt to some personnel choices. Thomas Müller is another year older. And then Sané is not having the same season as last year. Some of that could be tactical. Some of that could be just he's out of form, or maybe the manager and him. And Sané is not the most easy personality to work with. Maybe that there is something there. And so like, and then the last one I saw is like last year, whether it was a fluke or whether it was just coming out party of Matheus Tel, he had such a good kind of cameo season.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, he's not having the same kind of year this year. So like, I think all these are, to me, like different factors going into why, like, if you want to evaluate him, so we have to kind of take all these into account.
Well, there are a couple of things I want to come back to there, because a few questions spring to mind, which probably are like 6-month research projects for you, but we'll come back to those. I mean, they're top of the league right now. They're 4 points clear at the top of the league as we speak. And the advantage he has is that last season they underperformed and Leverkusen were a lot better. And this season they're kind of picking up points as you'd expect. and Leverkusen are considerably worse. So last year, Bayern were at kind of plus 1.6 expected goal difference per 90 in the Bundesliga, and Leverkusen were at plus 1.3. And that difference to me is kind of nothing, right? Because you're completely dominant against pretty much all the sides in the league.
Yeah.
So, and Leverkusen then ran a little bit hot too. So, and Bayern were a bit cold. So you had a team who were very close behind you, and you got unlucky, and that's enough for you not to win the league. In the end, they came third, obviously. Whereas this season, the numbers are pretty much exactly the same, plus 1.6 expected goal difference per 90, but Leverkusen have dropped back to plus 0.7. So suddenly the team that is closest to you is really kind of nowhere near you at all. So that is very helpful from the point of view of looking dominant and building up a bit of a head of steam in the league. And they're 4 points clear. They're the best team in the league. You kind of don't expect them to get into too much trouble. What is interesting to me, though, is that while the expected goal difference per 90 has stayed the same, it's happening in a different way, right? So the attack is slightly worse, but the defense is considerably better. Yeah. So the defense has gone from kind of just under 1 XG conceded per game, which, in the Bundesliga is not tremendous. And now it's at like 0.65 expected goals given up, which is absolutely bananas. And they're really good at stopping teams getting into their danger zone. And the press has become much more aggressive.
And also they don't, like, if you look at the possession, some of the defensive thing comes from the amount of possession they have. They're like close to 70%. So that is like average for the league season, not like some games. I saw there was a game, I don't remember which one, they had 80% possession. So that in itself cuts down XG conceded at like a more macro level, because you're not going to let team even have the ball enough to get into your final third.
Yeah. I think they've added something like 150 passes a game per game from last year. They were at something like just under 600 passes a game, and now they're at like over 700. And they're spending over half the game time in the middle third. They spent about 20% in their third, but like basically all the game, 80% of the game is in the middle third and the opponent's third. And the press has been really good, I think, there. Like that's a really encouraging sign for me, because last season, I really rate Tuchel very highly. I think Tuchel's an excellent coach. But last season, the press was pretty mediocre. It rated third in Germany. I think it was about, their PPDA was about 11, something like that, which is like nothing. And this year it's down to 7.6, and it's top by miles. And you can see this in Understat keep track of deep completion data. And last season, Leverkusen were better than Bayern, both for preventing deep completions, which I think it classes as passes within 20 meters of your goal or something. Leverkusen were better at getting their own and preventing the opponents. And now Bayern are top by absolutely miles. So last year you could complete a pass within 20 meters of the Bayern goal like nearly 6 times a game. Now it's like 3. And they've added some on the attacking end as well. So to me, the fact that it feels like, Ted and I were kind of talking about this with Arsenal on Monday, but it feels like Kompany has quite smartly looked at, or maybe he's done this, or maybe this is just how it's shaking out. But in the data, you could read it as Kompany looking at the enormous talent advantage he has in the Bundesliga and saying, let's just turn the shit happens dial to as close to 0 as possible, control the game, make it miserable for the opponents, and we've just got the horses to like outrun anyone.
Yeah, and I think that also means that you would reduce some of your upside, meaning that the XG production on the attack side you'll cut down some of that, but you take out any possibility of giving up a big chance or a chance with high XG. So I agree with that. I think and I think the possession control, the way they are controlling games, I think that's kind of what you can see on the field when you watch the games, is that games, like, they never get into running or up and down games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Or rarely.
That Leverkusen, the Barcelona game was absolutely not the kind of game they wanted to play, really. But the Leverkusen game is a perfect example, right? Where like Leverkusen didn't want anything to happen, and kind of nothing happened because Bayern were also scared of something happening.
Yeah.
But
Just on that point, like, it's interesting that we compare, like, let's say Barcelona game, which was they were playing high line and trying to just get in behind, and within like 3 minutes, both teams had scored. Kind of
yeah.
goal. So I think this is where a Bayern manager, the table stakes being, well, he needs to win the league very easily, which I think he's on the path to doing. But I think will you just evaluate him purely based on matches like the Barcelona match? Or at that level, do you just say, well, this is a given, but what about these games? You're going to play 10 games like this in a season. And how are you going to, like, what is your balance of those games? Because if his system is working well when he has that big talent advantage in the league against most of the opponents, but when he goes up against like teams that have ways to hurt him in his system and he'll have to come out and play counteract to that, the conversation always probably stops there. I think it will come to that point. To me, like, that's where, how do we evaluate him here?
Well, that's the thing. You asked about success criteria, and like, for a season taken in isolation, winning the league comfortably and reaching the quarterfinals is okay.
Yeah.
But if he's there for 3 years and every year he's won the league and gone out at the quarterfinals, Bayern will not be happy. They will say that this isn't good enough. And don't get me wrong, I think there are some squad issues to be solved here. It looks like Davies and Kimmich and Sané are all going to go in the next 6 months, pretty much. And when you look at some of the teams they fielded this year, I think Pavlovic is promising in lots of ways, but I don't look at him and think, oh, this is one of the best. This is like a best midfielder in the world candidate. They've used Guerrero and Lima as right backs. I still think that when you look as a centre back pairing, I like Kim a lot, but I think Kim and Upamecano, is that as good as the centre back pairings we see at lots of other elite sides around Europe? I'm not really convinced. So I do think there's work to be done on the squad there. So in the summer you would hope that they go ahead and do that. But Kompany's still quite early in his career. Do Bayern have to sort of manage expectations when it comes to individual matchups against good sides with good managers, knowing that Kompany will have had relatively few reps of that sort of thing?
Yeah, so obviously they can't do that in the public. I think, in the public, they would probably have to put a face that Bayern, we have to compete for every title. Even Champions League, we are a team that has a big history in Champions League. And so I don't think they can do it in public, obviously. But I think privately, within the boardroom or internally, I think they have to know, they have to have some, okay, we see this season, okay, this is the baseline. Let's say we get to quarterfinal, lose to, pick your side, let's say Liverpool. Let's say they get Liverpool in the quarterfinal. I don't know how it will happen. Let's say they get Liverpool in the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
And they end up losing over 2 legs. And then at the end of the year, you look at, you played 10 big matches and won 4 of them and 1 XG in 4 of them or 6 of them. And so that may be like, okay, so what is missing? How much percentage of that is just pure coaching and that he needs to get reps? And how much of that is where can we improve the squad or the roster so we can kind of get over that, instead of just winning 4, we can win 6 or 8 of those. So I think that this year would be more of well, this is what we have type year, I think, wherever he finishes. But I think from next year on, if he continues to be, as you said, if it is going to be winning the league and exiting around quarterfinal, I don't think in a year or 2 they will be happy with that.
So if you were analysing it, would you then, how would you go about the process of assessing it? Would you just pick all the games against big sides, like both domestically and in Europe, and like how do we do it?
From my past, from what I've done, I never liked the idea of splitting games like this is a big game, this is not a big game.
Yeah.
First of all, because one is the sample is already very small in terms of number of matches. Now you're splitting that into a third of it, maybe at best. So, but I think if you are like, but then I'm talking about an average team. But if you're talking about a team like Bayern, you have to do that, unfortunately, because your talent advantage and your budget advantage is so much that there is not a lot of teams that are going to give you a lot of trouble if you just show up and play your 7 on 10 performance. So you will have to do that. And so you look at it and say like, okay, what is missing? Like, okay, we went up against Liverpool, we lost. We went up against, okay, that's hypothetical. I don't want people to think that happened. Let's say, they went up against Villa, they lost. They went to Barcelona, they lost, convincingly. What is missing here? What would have, if there is a personnel solution, how do we fix that? And then also as a coach and as a coaching staff, it's like, what do we do differently next time we have to deal with it? Right. So, and then I think those are the conversations you want to have and be ready. Okay. To address this next time, if we play the same Barcelona with the same high line, how are we going to solve that? Do we have the players to solve that? If you don't, then maybe that's the whole process of identifying what are the gaps in the team to go from a Champions League quarterfinal level to challenging to be in the semifinals and challenging for the title.
Well, I mean, the fortunate thing, I guess, is that Kompany is not running them out in a kind of unconventional way.
Yes.
They're going out pretty much in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, and the positions they target should be usable for absolutely anybody. Like Bayern are always going to target guys who are extremely skilled passers and like top athletes. So from that point of view, they need to go out next summer. They did actually buy it. I completely missed this, but they did actually buy Sasha Boy back in the winter window last season, I think. And he's played a little bit here and there, but they're going to have to get a left back by the looks of things. They're going to need another centre-back. I think they need another central midfielder.
Yeah, they need a central midfielder, for sure.
And they might need another forward. I mean, another wide forward. So we're in I think they've wanted that for some time, actually. So there's a lot to be done here. And I don't know. My question is always how good the Bayern kind of backroom guys are. I bet Bayern have amazing backroom guys, as in like the analytics guys. But the people who make the decisions, I do not have that much faith in at Bayern Munich.
Yeah, the structure is also different, right? In Germany, how the players and the player recruitment and coach seems pretty much in most cases, coach is very separate. Just his job is to just coach, and you don't have as much say. Not that they don't have any input at all, but I'm sure that they have. On the player note, I wanted to, who played the most minutes for them this season?
Let me think. I should know this. I don't know. Is it Kimmich?
Kimmich.
Oh my god!
Played every minute.
They're just going to have to give him another contract.
Played every minute in the league. I didn't check Champions League, but played every minute in the league. So and a guy that's gonna, as you said, like he's he can start negotiating in a week or 2 weeks. As a free agent, but so obviously they may need two central midfielders if Kimmich is going to leave as well, and I guess there's some of the older Bayern players or the players that have been there like Gnabry, Sané, Kimmich, obviously, they all might. Not sure if there could also be somewhere some attrition purely based on this is not the coach or this is not the style I want to play.
Sure.
There could be some of that too. So that shakeout will also happen, I think.
Interesting. Well, I think it will also be interesting if we look at the end of the season. We can see how their results have gone against those better teams over the back half of the campaign, and maybe get a bit more of a bead on where Kompany is with them. But we'll leave them there for now. Bayern top of the league. They're one of the better sides in the Champions League. Nothing to worry about yet. moving on then to Ligue 1. So a team who do have a lot to worry about heading into the new year are Lyon. So Lyon, great historic club in France, but they are part of John Textor's multi-club group. I think it's Eagle Football Holdings, right?
Yeah.
And this group includes a share of Crystal Palace, it includes Botafogo, it includes a club in Belgium, Molenbeek, and the group as a whole is in the red to the tune of, I think, 400, 500 million euros. And Lyon anyway, owe about 100 mil, or they're in the red to the tune of 100 mil. And they tried to get round Ligue 1 by saying maybe we could shift some money over from here and different clubs. But in the end, Ligue 1 have handed them this provisional relegation to Ligue 2 and a transfer ban. So in order to avoid that, they need to raise a load of money in January. And they have been the architects of this themselves in some way. Like they went on a real tear this summer when they brought in, Niakate and Mangala, and they've got tons of guys there: Tolisso, Lacazette, Vertu, Matic, guys who are older, expensive. They've got Zaha on loan from Galatasaray. This is a huge amount of money in wages.
Yeah. Knowing, these sort of financial problems, they're not happening. Like, it's not like a flip of a switch that one day you wake up and you're 100 million in red, or one day you wake up and it's like you're losing 200 million. Like, it doesn't happen that way. Like, you had to have some idea of this is coming. And knowing that, and you do the summer window you did, not only they spent a lot of money, but also they've spent it very poorly. Like, some of the prices, I look at Niakate and the other player from, let me look it up.
From Forest.
From Forest. Those two signings, and I go, what? Like, it just feels like, Mangala,
But they bought Mangala as well and immediately loaned him out to Everton too. So it's like...
It was a pretty high price for him to get him for that price. And he's 26, you're paying 23 million euros, somewhere in that range. Like, that's a pretty high number. Niakate, 28-year-old, you paid 32 million euros. That just seems, for a team like Lyon, like, I can understand a team like Barcelona saying, we want somebody that's just world-class, that could just slot in and come play. Even that, I think they've done, Barcelona is a bad example. They've made so many poor signings. But you can see some teams saying, well, we're going to spend 50 million and get a player that's going to be a starter from day one type of player. But Lyon is not that team. Their success story is written on the back of making shrewd signings and selling them for profit year after year, finding talent. That's what the Lyon, that's what got them here, meaning to the prominence that they have and, the success they've had over the years. But like this Lyon, this version of Lyon in the last couple of years, since whenever the Eagle Football Holdings have taken over, I don't think they've had a good success. And this summer window I thought it was pretty poor. Yeah, and now, like, the problem is in football, if everybody knows you have to sell, just like any other business, then you're not going to get a good price to start with for anything, because people know you will have to sell.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some guys in here who they simply will not be able to move. Like those older guys that we were talking about. I don't think you... I mean, Lacazette's still scoring at a decent rate, but no one's going to go and pay what it's going to take to get him. No one's going to want to pay a fee and wages. The one good thing is that they've got 25 points in Ligue 1. They're probably not going to get relegated, even if they massively deplete the squad. So they do actually have license to kind of sell anyone they get a half decent offer for. And also, because they're Lyon, they've always got a few interesting young players coming through, because they've got this sensational academy, and clearly they have extremely smart, like, talent identification.
And I think that you could get some of these, I don't know, like, in terms of their salaries, how these guys are, like Matic, Lacazette, some of these older guys. But I think there are ways to maybe shed their salary, but that's not going to solve your 100 million problem. I think that in a big way. Like I think you have to, if you look at it, there's probably a couple of players that would fetch you real money that would make dent in that big number. Maybe 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
After that, you are talking about smaller numbers, like you have to sell 8 players to get up to 40 million or something, like, so
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the problem they'll run into.
So I think that those guys who can make the bigger dent, there's Caqueret, I think, who's been there far longer than I thought he would be there. I think he's an excellent player. He's just a real all-rounder in the midfield, really good passer, dribbles, defends in volume, can do a bit of everything. He's kind of a small guy, which may be why he hasn't had that move. And the other guy is Ryan Cherki, who is extremely talented. He's still only 21. He's extremely annoying. Like, he is known as kind of a douche. But he's been linked with Dortmund. He's been linked with Liverpool. He's an incredible creative passer. He leads them in expected goals and expected assists. I mean, he's a guy who you feel like, okay, 35, 40 million might be gettable here.
Yeah. His contract is expiring in 26.
Okay.
So you go into summer with 1 year left. So it's one of those, it feels like it's something that, in America, they use the term when you in shops, like this item is priced to sell, meaning that it's like, okay, it's like, we're going to make a deal. We just want to kind of move on from it. So because he has only 1 year left, I think he'll be very attractive for a lot of teams that they will come in with probably, Transfermarkt has him at 30. So yeah, somebody might come in at 30, 35. And the other thing in this financial situation, they may also have another thing to reckon with, is whether it makes a difference if all the money is paid up front or if the money is paid over 3 years. I would think that if all the money is paid up front is better. So a team could come to them and say, hey, we're going to pay you 25 up front and then maybe 5 add-ons based on performance or something. And they would probably have to take an offer like that just because you're getting, okay, I'm going to subtract 25 from the 100 with this one transaction today. There is no more, like I'm going to get 10 this year, 10 next year, 10 in the year 3. So like they have to reckon with that. So that's what I meant by price to sell, is like, he's like, he come in 26 and okay, he has 1 year left in contract. Hey, let's just get to a price and we can, whatever is the best payment schedule for you, we can work with that, but we will pay you maybe a bit less than the market value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, he should have a lot of suitors. Like he is an outstanding creative passer. He's at something like 9 progressive passes and like 4 passes into the penalty area. Which is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I looked at his numbers and was like, why is he still at Lyon? So I was like, that one should have been sold by now.
I think he was meant to go to PSG. I think he was meant to go to So supposedly his people were in contact with PSG, I think last summer, and or it might have been the one before. And in the end, the story that came out in the Parisian press when it didn't go through was that PSG felt that they had been treated disrespectfully by Cherki's entourage. And this has been a story we've heard about him and the guys around him for a long time. And it just feels like, I still think he's a great signing for almost anybody, provided 2 things: that you've got either a coach or that you've got the players in the squad who can kind of subdue these tendencies. And my instinct is that, he's come through the system at Lyon. Like, he's now one of their better players. The club has been drifting, managerially, behind the scenes, squad-wise, for kind of a while. My guess is that he just feels like the little king there, and he can do whatever he wants. Whereas if he were to go to Liverpool, that's absolutely not going to fly.
Yeah, so I think you talking about his entourage and all that thing, that makes me wonder, a lot of the teams that could actually pay this money might not be like, why do we pick this pain with us? Like,
Sure.
can we get another player, maybe slightly less prolific, but much more easier to work with? I think that there's definitely something to be said for that. I mean, based on all this, I feel like this seems like, to me, like this guy has West Ham or Spurs type written all over his transfer. Like,
Yeah.
a team that has the resources, but probably not like top team, that could come in for someone like that and pay whatever 30 billion and take him. But I can't see, with all the baggage around him, that a Liverpool or an Arsenal would come for him, or a team like that would come for him, no matter how talented he is.
I agree. I think there are a few others who I can see more suitors for. I think Mikautadze, he's like 24-year-old Georgian striker, has been very useful for a while. Big step up this year, like added a whole shot a game, and like it's not like Lyon are absolutely tearing up the French league, right?
Yeah.
He's just a guy who's approaching peak age, gets loads of shots, has good XG. He's pretty mobile as well, actually. I was looking at him and I thought, I could see if you can get this guy for like sub 25 million, like what about a Brentford or something where having a striker who gets loads of shots but is a better outlet receiver, is a little bit of a better ball carrier than you might expect. That kind of tweener role like might really suit him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I know when I looked at him, I tend to agree with your assessment there. The other one that for me is an interesting one, there's a couple. One is Malick Fofana.
Yeah, he looks really exciting. He's 19, right?
Output, the actual, like, he doesn't have the output, but he seems like somebody that's a prolific ball carrier and, like a dribbler profile.
Yeah.
I think he's 19, so obviously that's something that you need to kind of have end product. I think that seems to be missing from his game, but he definitely seems like very exciting, and that's kind of someone that people in this game generally get very excited by potential, and like that's where prices get inflated. So someone like him, I would still be very paying a ton of money for him, but he's 19, so the age is in his favor. So I think he could get some suitors, but you can compare him to Cherki in terms of output. Like, he's like so far back. Like, he's not.
Yeah.
Obviously different profile players, but if his output was even like 50th percentile in the league, when I say output, like end product, like shot creating actions and assists or goals or expected goals stuff. If he's only even 50th percentile in the league, I think he would be like an outrageous prospect.
If you chuck in his Europa League goals, then his end product looks okay. Like then I think he's got like 10 goal involvements in 1,200 minutes, which is pretty. But
that's pretty good.
I know what you're saying though. Like his XG numbers are not incredible, and you look at him and you think, okay, this guy carries the ball into the box a lot, and he gets like 6 touches in the box a game, which is bananas. So like we assume that if you get that many touches in the box, at some point you're going to get high value shots in the box as well, right? Like that seems to be like that would be the kind of the thought process, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other name I have is Ernest Nuamah.
Yeah,
they paid a lot of money for him, so I don't know how much more you can get for him to really. Like, I guess even if they get what they paid for him, that would be helpful in this case.
Sure. Yeah, I guess.
I think his numbers, his end product numbers are slightly better. I think, like in terms of shot creating actions, I think he's up to like 75th percentile. He's another great dribbler, ball carrier. He does run in behind and receive like line breaking passes. So he has that in his game. So I think that's another candidate, that someone that could see him and say like, yeah, he has a little bit more polish to him compared to like Fofana, who's getting there.
Yeah. Just before we move on from this, if you had to pick a club for Fofana and one for Nuamah, what kind of level are we thinking about here? Because I was really excited by Fofana, but I was kind of, I had that thought of like, look, he doesn't get dispossessed a lot, and he's a pretty good passer, and those things are such deal breakers for elite sides that the fact they don't exist here is a good sign. But I thought, I really don't know, like how to ballpark the kind of level that I think he might be ready for.
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to say lower part of the Premier League
Okay.
teams probably is like where I think probably their next step is, or even move to a Bundesliga where they can get more. I think that league will suit some of their characteristics.
I like that idea.
That's where, that's where I see them. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, look, I've kept you for a long time, so we're just going to have a very quick look at Serie A. We've been talking about the Serie A title race, both on the newsletter and on the podcast, over the first half of the season, because it's been bananas. It's been 6 or 7 teams all up there. And now we've got Atalanta top on 37 points. Second, we've got Napoli on 35 points. And then on 34 points, but with a game in hand, you've got Inter. And then Fiorentina, Lazio, like everybody kind of then is down from like 31 points to 23. So Milan counting out at 23. Bologna have 25, but they're not good. Juve 28. I think that's too big a difference when they're not great. The question is, Ravi, is it down to these 3 teams, Atalanta, Napoli, and Inter for the title?
That's how I see it now. I think we are now getting to a point where things are shaking out a lot more. And I think these 3 are starting to create a separation at the top.
Yeah.
I think when we did this about 2 months ago in October, I thought Inter still is the most complete team of all these. And I think I expect them to win the title in the end. I still maintain that. I think they are, if I look at their overall metrics, compare it to Atalanta is closest to them in terms of their, if you compare them both. But I still think Inter is maybe like a step above overall. So I would think that these 3, Fiorentina has been on a tear since the last time we spoke, because then they were not in the thing. And I looked at some of their numbers. I think that they have some of I think that I would say that they are probably will fade away as the season progresses.
Their numbers are weaker than Lazio and Juve and Milan, and also like they just don't have the squad that these other guys got. Whereas Inter, I think I said this last time, but Inter was so much better than this last season, and they haven't really got that much out of Martinez. In particular, has had a big drop in expected goals, a big drop in shots. You just look at that performance last year, and you think there's as much reason to expect that they get better than this over the back half of the campaign as there is to imagine they might get worse. I mean, they're not very injured, and neither are Atalanta. So I guess that a bad injury to either side, like Lookman going down for Atalanta would be an enormous problem, for example. But broadly speaking, these are the teams with the best numbers. And I also just kind of think that, like, look, it would be really bad for Atalanta if Retegui got injured, but they've got Scamacca will come back at some point, I think in February, something like that. They've still got De Ketelaere. They've got Lookman. I kind of feel that Gasperini can make it work in attack. I'd really want them to do it. I want them to win it.
Yeah, so one of the things with Fiorentina is that if you look at their expected goal difference away from home, it's like close to 0. And that's not to win titles, you need to win games away from home. I think winning home games can get you into Europe. But I think winning the title means you have to get, away games also sorted. So I think both Inter and I think Inter probably is the best in that respect, like winning away. And Atalanta is close between those 2. So to me, like, it might even turn out to be a race between those 2. Like, I do think Napoli has overachieved a bit. Now, the advantage they have is they don't have Europe, Champions League. because both Atalanta and Napoli have Champions League. Especially Atalanta, probably not a team that is used to playing the top end Champions League teams midweek and win their games, league games as well. So that may come back to haunt them a bit later on as we go into February.
Yeah.
But I think that I see them this could end up as a neck and neck race up until April between Atalanta and Inter.
Yeah, I agree. I think Inter, if they win that game in hand, then they're going to be level with Atalanta on points.
Mm-hmm.
And Napoli are not as good as Inter. And also, I was looking at, though Napoli did come through this very tough run of games like reasonably well, but Atalanta's January, they've got Lazio, they've got Inter in the Cup, they've got Juve, they've got Napoli, they've got Barcelona away, though by that point, they might just be able to totally rotate for that. Like, who cares?
Yeah, so I looked up, Atalanta's got Empoli, Lazio, and after the break at Udinese, Juve, Napoli at home. That's Atalanta. So they have really a toughest schedule. Inter, in comparison, has Como, Cagliari, Venezia, Bologna, and Empoli. So a couple of them were away, but like Cagliari and Venezia. Yeah, Fiorentina is Udinese home, at Juventus, Napoli, Monza, and Torino. So that they still have a couple of. I mean, Udinese at home is hard. Udinese at home probably not as hard as playing in Udine. So I think Inter's got a pretty probably in the next 5 games they probably could get 15 points or 13 points.
Agreed.
Atalanta probably not.
Yeah, well, I hope they do it, but I think it's going to be a tough one for them. We'll see how it goes later on in the season. It might get interesting if these sides start to have to, split their resources depending on how they're doing in the Champions League, the draw in the Champions League. That brings us to a close for this podcast. And actually, Ravi and I are done together until the new year. I won't see you until early mid-Jan, actually, Ravi.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to just watch football.
We're going to have to just watch football. Yeah. Cool. It's been great. And, hopefully we'll have a lot more fun next season. Or sorry, not next season, next year.
Yeah, that's the MLS schedule baked into you there, Ravi. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been a really fun few months, and thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. If you do like this, then please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop us a comment if there's something that you particularly like to see us talk about. Leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, and we will be back with more European football in the new year. There will be one more podcast before Christmas. That should be out on Monday. That should be me and Ted. But thank you very much for supporting us over the first 6 months of life. And we'll catch you later. Bye.